Epimna sat in the cockpit of her ship, staring at the drifting debris outside the window. She didn't think that they would escape the blast when the star fortress exploded behind them. Luckily for Koth's piloting skills, her ship was only propelled forward. She could hardly believe it even with the wreckage before her. They did it. The star fortress that was oppressing all of Nar Shaddaa was finally destroyed. Epimna could not bring herself to join Koth and the rest of the crew in celebration. She could only slump in her seat, succumbing to her sore muscles. This was far from over. She wondered if she would ever leave this life of espionage and war. She thought she could finally put away her blaster rifle and vibroknife when she left Imperial intelligence. Her past kept coming back to bite her. Epimna might have deleted the existence of her time as Cipher 9 using the Black Codex, but she could never delete herself from the minds of others. Someone slipped their tongue, and it brought her nothing but suffering. Attracting some of the worst people. She would never forgive Lana Beniko for what she did to her family. That Sith was the reason why she and her husband, Phaeton, had to flee the planet Voss to Nar Shaddaa in the first place. Her time settling down on Voss with Phaeton felt like a fleeting dream, a dream she still longed for despite her better judgment. She could still see their tea shop if she closed her eyes, full of smiling customers with the aroma of fresh brews and sweet pastries. The cool breeze brushing against her pale skin and marveling at the multicolored leaves carried by the autumn air. Epimna sighed to herself. She knew better than anyone that she was more likely to die in battle than ever go back to her paradise. Epimna felt warm hands wrap around her, and she instinctively leaned into them, knowing immediately that it was Phaeton. The Voss man was lean and muscular in his commando armor. His blue skin was covered in colorful markings that reminded her of an abstract painting. Their eyes met, his yellow eyes gazing into her reddish-brown. "My wife," he began, kissing her freckled cheek. "Don't you want to celebrate with the others?" Epimna shook her head before looking back at the scraps of metal floating outside the ship's window. "We should be planning our next move, not partying," she said. "With the Eternal Empire's limitless wealth, who knows when another one of those fortresses will be remade and overtake us again." Phaeton hummed in understanding and rested his head on her shoulder. He smelt like a mixture of tea and incense, a soothing combination that loosened her a little. "Epimna, we bring hope back to the galaxy. We show others that we have a chance to defeat Arkan and end this war. Do not fret. Others will join our cause." Epimna smiled a little and caressed his face. He always had a way of brightening the worst of situations. Phaeton was her lantern in this dark tunnel of life. "Yes," she replied, giving him a quick peck on the lips. "For now." "There you two are," Koth laughed, walking in with 2 cups of alcohol in his hands. Was able to snag a few drinks before Len could down it all and get himself into a drunk stupor. Koth handed them their drinks. 1 star fortress down, 5 to go. "We make a good team," he cheered before sitting down across from them. Phaeton nodded with much enthusiasm. Epimna glanced between her husband and their unlikely ally. "Remember our deal?" Koth asked with a raised eyebrow. Epimna scoffed. Of course, she remembered. It was the most ridiculous deal she had ever agreed to. She would never forget the night they met, that scuffle between Koth's group and the Zakulian Sky Troopers in the cantina she used to own. She was indulging in a childhood dream of being a performer while gathering intel when it happened. The group of Sky Troopers barged into the place, their blasters pointing at her audience. With screaming and blaster fire, chaos ensued. How gallant Koth looked when he swooped in to save her when a Sky Trooper targeted her. She will never forget the look on his face when she instead saved him using only the vibroknife strapped to her thigh, hidden until she sliced the Sky Trooper's head clean off. Koth made his proposal to her right then and there, smiling and covered in droid oil. Epimna smelt and sloshed her drink, checking if it was poisoned out of habit. Once safe, she downed it in one swing. She couldn't contain her chuckle when she noticed Koth trying to cover his anticipation in vain. "I'm serious. Do you want to be a part of my crew or not?" Koth demanded with a pout. This made Epimna laugh harder and lean back in her chair. "I never said no," Epimna said simply. "With what we have been through, I believe we are already a team," Phaeton insisted. Who would have thought an ex-spy like her could feel this comfortable around an ally she only spent a few months working with? Koth reminded Epimnu of a steaming mug of Saif, his personality bitter, but smooth, always energizing everyone around him. He cared for his crew members, and soon enough, she and her husband joined his circle. Epimnu couldn't imagine not being a part of his crew. Phaeton poured his helping into her cup. Her husband never was much for the cold hard stuff now that she thought about it, preferring mostly spiked hot drinks. Epimnu made a mental note to make him a mug of spiked cider later. Why even ask? Epimnu chuckled. Hey, don't blame a guy for making sure, Koth said with a shrug. I do have one condition if you want to continue our partnership, Epimnu said. My ship, my rules. As long as you and your team follow my rules, I'll follow your lead. Deal? She held out her hand and Koth beamed before he shook it. Deal. The touching moment was interrupted by the Hala terminal ringing. One of the crew members, a Kathar with a braided ponytail, rushed into the cockpit out of breath. There's an unknown hollow frequency, she said before running to the main deck.